All right, well, as the standoff between India and President Trump continues, the Indian markets brace for impact while Indians living in the United States expect their supply of Indian imports to shoot up in cost. What will be the impact of Trump's tariff tantrums? NewsX has brought some of the most prominent members of the Indian diaspora to discuss this issue, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing in the next few minutes. Joining us on the program at this point in time is Mr. Arvind Mahajan, Professor of Finance, Texas A&M University. Mr. Mahajan, appreciate you joining us. I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. So thank you for joining us and taking out the time and speaking with NewsX. First up, what was your initial reaction when the tariffs were pumped up from 25% to 50% by Donald Trump? The feeling in India is, of course, very, very that of being disappointed because the Indian, people thought that the Americans are a friend of ours and we will never be put through this kind of a treatment. What are your thoughts on this whole tariff narrative?
Yeah, so I can clearly understand the sensibilities of the Indians. Frankly, on the first pass, that was my reaction as well. However, I think we have to step back and look at this whole issue of tariffs and trade in a more dispassionate manner. And also in the context of Trump administration and his style of negotiations. So while it may seem a bit unfair, the tariff policy to start with has been somewhat incoherent. So this move was really not that unsurprising. The other thing I would say is that the game is still afoot. We do not know where this is going to land up. Are we in a phase of negotiation, or is this something more than that? I would say we need to be somewhat patient and see how this gets played out.
Dr. Mahajan, there is also a concern in India that the Americans are being, extremely lenient with the Chinese, and whatever groundwork the Indians and the Americans have done in the last decade is all going down the drain because of Trump, not understanding the situation. India is still a developing country. We have our own sensitivities when it comes to tariffs. Donald Trump, the president, does not understand why India protects its own industries.
I think to a large extent that probably is true. However, that understanding really is more to the negotiators who are actually actively negotiating. The president may not know, but the negotiators certainly do. The other thing I think I do need to say is that while clearly being a developing country, all developing countries protect their industries because they are nascent and they cannot compete with the mature industries from outside. Over a period of time, a country needs to let go of that protection as well. If they don't let go of that protection, the industry will always remain weak. So this is not to justify what the Trump administration is doing. This is just a broader statement about India's red lines, in particular in the context of agriculture. Because if I recall correctly, the 3 farm bills which were passed really were passed to inject competition in that industry. And frankly, I personally thought that the administration could use the tariffs as an excuse to bring about some changes in agriculture, notwithstanding the fact that agriculture is a matter of national security for virtually all countries.
So what do you think is going to happen next? Do you think that this is the style and fashion with which Donald Trump operates, creates a sense of urgency and then he settles down? Is that what we need to brace for?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. I mean, I think by this time, and frankly, I think the Indian negotiators are fairly astute. I think they have understood the style of negotiation in this particular administration. And that is why I think they are, as is the American side, diligently prodding on in trying to find a solution. Also, I should say that I think in some ways it's somewhat inappropriate to compare India and China, I think every country has their own dynamics, they have their own pathways, they have their own relationships. And in the context of China, the game is again very much afoot. It's a much more complex. China is a much more complex issue for the United States than India is. And it is going to take much longer to sort that out. That's why you have a 90-day exemption given to them. Also, I think one needs to realistically recognize that China does have more bargaining power than India does, especially when it comes to rare earths, uh, stuff which is needed for electronic manufacturing, etc. So I think comparing India and China perhaps will just cause more heartache than providing anything more relevant.
So, people like John Bolton and Fareed Zakaria have gone on to say that, this move with India is going to backfire. 20 years of diplomacy, 20 years of, a bilateral bonhomie is going to be flushed down because the approach with which Donald Trump is operating is not feasible. There is a sense that Pakistan is gotten on the good books of the Americans, and India is somehow being put on the back burner. Do you think that this is something which could harm relationships between these two countries?
Yeah, they could. Indeed, they could. And that is why I think one has to be a little bit careful in trying to figure out what exactly is going on with the India-US relationships. If this relationship, this partnership, is affected at a more fundamental level, an Indian relationship with the United States is very deep, especially when it comes to AI, security, defense procurement, technical transfer of information. So the question India really has to ask is, how is American policy towards these fundamental questions being affected? And if it is not being affected, then this is simply a matter of trade. And we know very well that countries don't have permanent friends, they only have permanent interests. And this is just a part of negotiating ploy. However, if we sense that our strategic fundamental relationship with the United States is being affected, and I have not seen any signs of that yet, then I think something to be concerned about. Otherwise, this is at par. This is a part of the negotiating process.
Right.
So I am not personally that concerned. I am waiting for clues as to what happens to India-America relationship on those very fundamental questions.
Dr. Mahajan, there is also a sense that people in India are getting that Donald Trump does not want companies like Apple to manufacture in India. He has already given an ultimatum to Tim Cook. He does not want Indian techies to come and work in the United States. Now, these are some of the foundations on which, this relationship was developed. Do you think that if something like this does transpire, then all bets are off? Donald Trump is only going to strengthen BRICS.
Yeah, it is true that Donald Trump does not want, clearly, India, there was a euphoria in India that this problem of US-China relationships is going to shift supply chains to India. Suddenly, I think India is realizing that India is becoming a major player as well in global economy. And whenever you become a major player in the economy, the big dogs always take notice of you and they want to contain you. So again, this is not surprising. I mean, I think Indians would be carried away if they think that US is going to see them through and become a developed country. That is up to India. The US is going to do what is in the best interest of the US, just like what India does is in the best interest of India. So you're right. Trump had announced earlier that he wants manufacturing back in the United States. Now, whether that's possible or not, that is another matter altogether. Whether one should aspire for that or not, that's another matter altogether. But his policy has been very clear. So it is not that surprising that he will encourage American firms to invest in the United States as opposed to anywhere else, including China or India or Vietnam or Korea.